It all began on one of those cold, gray afternoons that make you pull your collar up a little tighter. I was walking home from school, just like any other day, lost in my own thoughts. That's when I first saw him. He was standing across the street, a tall figure in a long, dark coat. A hat was pulled down low, casting his face in shadow. At first, I didn't think much of it. Just another person waiting, I guess. But then I felt a prickle on the back of my neck. I looked again, and I realized he wasn't just standing there, he was staring directly at me. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was nothing, just my imagination running wild. But the next day, he was there again, in the same spot, and the day after that. Each day, he seemed to be a little bit closer. I'd see him at the bus stop, his form a dark silhouette against the morning fog. I'd catch a glimpse of him outside the school gates, just standing, motionless. Then, I started seeing him on my own street. My heart would pound in my chest, and I'd quicken my pace, my keys clutched tight in my hand until my knuckles were white. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. Who would follow me? Why, it made no sense. So, I decided to test it. I took a different route home, a longer, more complicated path that wound through a part of town I rarely visited. My steps echoed in the quiet streets, and I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting, half dreading to see him. For a while, there was nothing. A wave of relief washed over me. See? Just my imagination. But as I turned the final corner onto my block, my breath caught in my throat. There he was. At the end of the street, waiting, the long dark coat, the hat hiding his face. He knew. He knew where I was going. The relief I'd felt moments before turned into ice in my veins. This was real. The fear followed me home, clinging to me like a second skin. I started checking the locks on the doors and windows obsessively. I'd jump at every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside. My parents thought I was just stressed from school. They told me to relax, that I was letting my imagination get the better of me. How could I explain a fear so baseless, yet so consuming? How could I describe the feeling of being watched by someone I couldn't even see? The nights were the worst. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening. Every shadow seemed to morph into his shape. Then came the night I was home alone. A storm was raging outside, rain lashing against the windows, the wind howling like a wounded animal. I was curled up on the sofa, trying to lose myself in a movie. The storm was too loud, too unsettling. That's when I heard it, a sound that wasn't the storm. A slow, metallic scraping sound coming from the front door. My blood ran cold. It was the handle. Someone was turning the front door handle, slowly, deliberately. It was the same sound I'd heard in my nightmares for weeks. I was paralyzed, unable to move, unable to breathe. The turning stopped. Silence. Just the storm and the frantic beating of my own heart. I finally scrambled for my phone, my fingers fumbling as I dialed for help. By the time the police arrived, the house was silent and empty. They searched the area, but there was no sign of anyone. No footprints in the mud, no fingerprints on the door, nothing. They left, telling me to call if anything else happened, but their expressions were filled with a placid skepticism. It was just a storm, they implied. An old house making noises, but I know what I heard, and I know who it was. The man was gone, but he isn't gone for good. I feel it, deep down, in a place colder than fear. I know he's still out there, somewhere in the shadows, waiting, watching, and one day, he'll be back to finish what he started. Thanks so much for listening to my story. If you have any experiences like this, I'd be interested to hear them in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Stay safe out there. When I was 22, I was just trying to make ends meet, working at a small subway in my hometown. It was usually pretty quiet, just the regulars and the occasional rush. Then he started coming in. Every single day, like clockwork, right at 3 p.m. He'd order the same sandwich. Footlong meatball marinara on wheat, and just ... stare. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was just zoning out. But his eyes always found me, specifically my piercings. I had a few back then, a nose ring, some in my ears, an eyebrow ring. Nothing too crazy, I thought. But his comments started getting weird. It began with a simple, "I like your piercings." I'd say thanks and try to move on. Then it escalated. "How many do you have?" He'd ask, leaning closer over the counter. "Do they hurt?" His voice was low and his stare was so intense it made my skin crawl. I'd give vague answers, hoping he'd take the hint. He never did. He just kept coming back day after day with more and more personal questions. I started dreading 3 p.m. My stomach would be in knots just waiting for him to walk through that door. Then things took a much darker turn. I finished my shift one evening and walked out to my car to find a note tucked under the windshield wiper. My heart dropped. It was a folded napkin from the subway. In messy block letters, it read, "Nice piercings. See you tomorrow." A cold chill ran down my spine. This wasn't just a weird customer anymore. This was someone who knew my car, knew my schedule. I felt a knot of pure fear tighten in my chest. I drove home looking in my rear view mirror the entire way, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. The notes on my car became a regular occurrence. But the real terror began when the phone calls started. I had an unlisted number, so how he got it, I'll never know. The first time he called, it was late, around midnight. I answered, thinking it was a friend. But there was just silence on the other end, then a low, raspy whisper. "So beautiful, ... Your piercings." I slammed the phone down, my heart pounding against my ribs. He called back, again and again. Every night, the same whisper, the same chilling obsession. I stopped answering my phone, but the ringing itself felt like a violation, a constant reminder that he could reach me even in my own home. The final, terrifying night happened after a late closing shift. The parking lot was empty and dimly lit. I was fumbling for my keys. My senses on high alert when a hand clamped down on my arm from the darkness. I froze. "Don't scream," he whispered, his hot, foul breath on my neck. It was him. I could smell the stale scent of marinara sauce and something else, something sour. My mind went completely blank with terror. In that moment, a car's headlights flooded the parking lot, and a voice boomed, "Get away from her." I've called the police. It was my manager, Karen. She'd stayed late to finish paperwork and saw him lurking. He let go and sprinted into the darkness. The police arrested him later that night. They found him living in a derelict house just a few blocks from the subway. Inside, they discovered a notebook filled with pictures of me he'd taken without my knowledge, and pages upon pages of writing about my piercings. Reading those pages in the police report felt like a violation all over again. He had built this entire twisted fantasy around me. That man's obsession almost cost me everything. It's a chilling reminder of how quickly a situation can escalate, and to always trust your gut. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you've ever been in a situation like this, please know you're not alone. Stay safe out there, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps the channel. Thanks again. Moving into a new neighborhood is supposed to be exciting, a fresh start. For my husband and I, it felt that way at first. The houses were nice, the lawns were green, and our next door neighbor, Rick, seemed friendly. He was a bit older, lived alone, and was always ready with a wave and a smile. At first, it was just neighborly things. He'd offer to help with the garden or bring our trash cans in. We thought, wow, what a great guy. But soon his friendliness started to feel ... off. It began with small gifts. A bouquet of flowers left on our doorstep, and then a book of poetry. The gestures seemed innocent, but they kept coming, and they were always addressed to me. One day, a handwritten note appeared. It was a poem he'd written himself. The last line read, "To the forbidden woman I love." My blood ran cold. This wasn't neighborly anymore. This was something else, something much more unsettling. My husband was furious. We politely but firmly told him his attention was unwanted and made us uncomfortable. He just smiled, said he understood, but his eyes told a different story. His behavior only escalated. I'd D in the kitchen and look out the window to see him standing across the street, just staring at our house. I'd go out to get the mail, and he'd be parked in his car at the end of the block, watching. At night, I'd sometimes catch a flicker of movement and see his silhouette in his window, his gaze fixed on our home. The feeling of being constantly watched was suffocating. It felt like we were living in a glass box, with him as the sole audience. We were prisoners in our own home. We called the police, desperate for help. We showed them the notes, the poems. We told them about the constant surveillance. Their response was disheartening. Has he threatened you? Has he touched you? Has he been on your property? No, and no. They told us that while his behavior was creepy, he hadn't actually broken any laws. There was nothing they could do. We felt completely helpless. It was our word against his, and without a direct threat, their hands were tied. The system that was supposed to protect us had failed. The gifts got stranger. One evening, we found a small ornate box on our porch. Inside was a small urn, filled with ashes. The note attached was cryptic. This means something between us. I was horrified. What was I supposed to do with this? Whose ashes were they? The questions spiraled in my mind, each one darker than the last. Rick's obsession was no longer just a fixation. It felt like a twisted psychological game, and he was the only one who knew the rules. The final straw came when we tried to escape. We needed a break to feel normal again, so we booked a cabin in the mountains for a weekend. We didn't tell anyone where we were going, or so we thought. On our second night, there was a loud, aggressive pounding on the cabin door. My husband opened it to find Rick, drunk and belligerent, demanding to speak to me. He had followed us. He had found us. The one place we thought we were safe, he had invaded. That was the moment we knew we had to leave for good. We put our house on the market immediately. The process felt like an eternity. Every day spent looking over our shoulders. The day we finally moved was a blur of boxes and anxiety. As we drove away from the house, away from the neighborhood, I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. And there he was. Rick, standing at the end of the street, motionless, just watching us go. He never laid a hand on me, but he stole our sense of security, our peace of mind. He haunted our lives, and in a way, he always will. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever experienced something like this, please know you're not alone. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more content. Stay safe out there.